All right, today we're jumping into something really wild, a theory that connects two incredibly ancient traditions. It's all about a possible code, a cipher, that's been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years, right inside an ancient language.
So that really is the heart of it, isn't it? Could the stories that are so foundational to Western civilization have been secretly encoded thousands of years ago into the actual brushstrokes of ancient Chinese? I mean, that's a huge claim, right? So let's actually dig in and see what the evidence looks like.
So here's the core idea. The theory says that the ancient Chinese characters, the Hanzi, aren't just pretty symbols. Nope. The idea is that they're more like a linguistic fossil record, a way of preserving a story that's even older than the writing itself. So, yeah, let's start digging.
And we're not just talking about finding some vague similarities here. The theory actually calls this a forensic account. The idea is that if you break down these ancient characters into their smallest parts, what are called radicals, you can literally piece together a story that looks an awful lot like the book of Genesis.
Okay, so where do we even begin? Well, at the beginning, of course. Not just our beginning, but the beginning of the story, the creation of the very first human.
Take a look at this. This single ancient character supposedly tells the entire story of how the first man came to be. But to really see it, you can't just look at the whole thing. You got to take it apart, piece by piece.
So here's how it works. See that? The character is actually made up of three different parts. You've got a radical for dust, then another one for breath, and this third one, that means life. Now watch what happens when you put them all back together. The story just pops out. You get a living being made from dust who was given the breath of life. And if that sounds familiar, well, yeah, it's almost a perfect match for the Genesis account, right? God forming man from dust and breathing life into him. A coincidence? According to this theory, absolutely not. Okay, so if the main character is there, what about the stage? Let's check out the setting for this whole drama. What about the Garden of Eden itself? All right, this is the ancient Chinese character for garden. And yeah, at first glance, it just looks like a box, some kind of enclosure. But the theory says, if you look closer, the geometry inside tells a way bigger story.
So let's break it down. You've got the outer box, right? That's the enclosure. But look inside. It's split into four distinct sections, a four-way division. Now, what does Genesis say? A river flowed out of Eden, and then it split into four rivers. It's like this character is a little map of that exact layout.
Every good story needs some conflict, right? And in Eden, that conflict revolved around one central rule, something that was forbidden. So let's see how the ancient script handles that very idea.
And this is where it gets super specific. The character for forbidden is actually made of two radicals. The first one represents two trees. The second one, it signifies a command coming from a divine or authoritative source.
So think about what that means. The word for forbidden isn't some abstract concept. It's literally a picture of a divine command about two specific trees. I mean, that lines up perfectly with the story of the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, doesn't it? And of course, that leads us right to the next beat in the story. After you get a command, what comes next? Temptation. And the theory claims that the character for desire or greed is basically a photograph of that exact moment. Check this out. Look at how it's put together. You've got the radical for woman combined with that same radical for two trees we just saw in the word forbidden. This is what the theory means by a forensic narrative. The character for desire is quite literally a picture of a woman standing under those two forbidden trees. It's a snapshot of Eve's moment of temptation, just as it's described in Genesis. Okay, let's just stop for a second. The big question here is, how? How on earth could a civilization thousands of miles and a whole continent away from ancient Israel have these very specific stories baked into their language? Well, the theory has an answer, and it all goes back to the very earliest migrations of humanity.
The idea goes something like this. As the first humans spread out across the globe, they didn't just carry tools and survival skills. They carried their stories, their foundational oral histories. You could almost think of it like a cultural genetic memory. And then, much later, when writing was finally invented, it was a perfect technology to lock those ancient stories down, to preserve them in stone, so to speak.
And it's not just the pictures. The theory also points to what sound like phonetic echoes across completely different cultures. If you look at the names for the first, primordial human figures, you see these really interesting similarities between Sumerian, Hebrew, and even early Chinese names.
It kind of hints that maybe, just maybe, these stories all came from the same source way back when.
So if you follow this theory, these characters weren't just for writing down lists of grain or whatever. They were a way to encode a shared trauma, this deep collective memory of a paradise that was lost. The writing itself became the time capsule.
And that brings us to the end of this incredible puzzle. We're talking about a secret that was supposedly kept right out in the open for a huge, huge span of human history. Just think about that number, 4,000 years. That's how long this story has allegedly been sitting there, hidden in plain sight, etched into the characters that over 1 billion people still use every single day.
So, to wrap it all up, what this theory really does is reframe the entire purpose of ancient Chinese script. It's not just a way to communicate, it's a prehistoric time capsule. The argument is that inside these brushstrokes, you don't just find words, you find an incredibly detailed, perfectly preserved narrative of humanity's oldest origin story.
And that really leaves us with one last big question to chew on. What other secrets could be locked away in the symbols we see all around us every day? What if language itself isn't just a tool we use now, but is actually a living, breathing fossil record of our oldest, most foundational stories?